I'm an avid user of both Pro Tools and Ableton, and I get a lot of questions of the differences and why do I use both. So today I'm going to talk about Pro Tools versus Ableton. Pros, cons, differences, what I like about each one, and some secret tips of mine that you might find useful. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, and welcome to Distinct Mastering. My name is Freddie. I'm a mastering engineer, producer, DJ, and president of Sleeping Giant Music. For over 2 decades, I've helped artists grow their careers, and now I'm here to help you with your music production skills. If you like my content, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Now let's chat about Pro Tools versus Ableton. Okay, a lot of people have asked me the differences of Pro Tools and Ableton, and I'm an avid user of both programs. Each program has their pros and their cons, and I'm going to discuss a few of them in this video. There's things I like about Pro Tools over Ableton, and there's things that I like in Ableton that Pro Tools doesn't offer. So, there's no right or wrong. Whatever DAW that you choose to use should be more about what you're trying to do. So let's say, for example, you're an electronic music producer. Your obvious choice is you're probably going to be moving more towards an Ableton. Ableton is more of a music production suite all-in-one. Now, if you're maybe more of a guitar player or working in a band and you want to record yourself, my obvious choice would be Pro Tools. Pro Tools is more of an analog style tape machine, and the editing capabilities in Pro Tools are amazing. They blow Ableton's out of the water. So if you're doing audio editing or post-production, Pro Tools is the obvious choice. One of the other things that I want to point out is that Pro Tools is the industry standard. So it's going to be in every commercial studio around the world. So if you're trying to take your sessions place to place, Pro Tools is going to be your go-to. That does not mean that you cannot start your project in Ableton like I do and then bounce everything to stems or Wave, AIFF, and just take it into Pro Tools from there. A lot of people do just mix and master in Pro Tools. I do all of my clients' mastering in Pro Tools. I do believe that Pro Tools, the mix architecture, just sounds better. So let's get into some of the differences between the two. The first major difference that you're going to find with Pro Tools is cost. With Pro Tools, you're going to be paying a yearly fee, and with Ableton, you're going to pay a one-time fee. The only time you ever need to upgrade and pay Ableton again is when they have a new version. You'll have to pay a small fee to upgrade to that new version. That being said, Pro Tools does offer a free version, I believe called Pro Tools First, so you could try it out. But it's just a limited version. And then Ableton offers a demo. So give them both a try if you're on the fence. Now let's get into some of the differences. Here I've got a Pro Tools session opened up and I just got some songs loaded in. I'm not going to play anything here, but the editing capabilities in Pro Tools are amazing. First, you have 4 modes you can work in. You have shuffle, spot, grid, and slip. And I'm not going to get into too many details about these different modes. The grid mode is similar to Ableton, where you're going to be working in a grid style fashion. Ableton, you could turn off the grid, which would be similar to slip mode, where you're just slipping and sliding. And then you have shuffle mode here, which is great if you want to shuffle things. See, it puts things kind of end to end, and if I drag it there, it's going to put it right there and move this over. If I were to, say, delete this section, it's going to bring everything back. So that's a cool mode that Ableton does not offer. The editing tools here at the top are immense, and from the zoom, Ableton can zoom. Obviously you have the trimmer. Ableton can obviously do that, but here you have time compression expansion, which is going to time compress and expand. And Ableton works a little different, where everything is kind of being warped and everything is being time compressed and expand. So this is a little different way of working. You have your selection tool, which Ableton has. You have your grabber, and then notice there's some drop downs that you might want to get into some more expanded tools there. Now here's one thing that Ableton doesn't quite have. This is the scrubber tool. And what this does is allows you to scrub the audio. So you would be listening to a very small instance of the audio here. Let me go ahead and unmute this. So say I've got a click in this audio that I need to fix. I can scrub it, find it, zoom in, and then use this pencil tool here to literally draw in the audio. I can change the waveform with a pencil, which is crazy because Ableton does not do that. So that's an amazing tool. Maybe you got a click and you're working in Ableton, you could export that wave or AIFF, bring it into Pro Tools, fix the audio, and bring it back into Ableton. You know, there's benefits to each program. And another thing that I might suggest, obviously if you're trying to get out a click, you can use a restoration tool, but it's just a very cool feature to be able to just pencil in and change the waveform the way you want. Okay, another feature that I love about Pro Tools that Ableton does not offer is the tab to transient feature, and you can turn that on right there. And what that allows you to do, let me zoom in, is it allows you to hit the tab button and just tab along to the transients of the waveform. This is very handy, and then I can hold shift and tab and select what I want. Maybe I want to slice that out. You know, the possibilities get real crazy here. I used to use this tool all the time to make DJ edits in Pro Tools back in the day, where I'd shorten up songs, maybe 80s songs or house songs, or make different versions for how I wanted to play them. Maybe I wanted to bring a section from the middle of the song or the end of the song to the beginning and then have it drop into the chorus. I would use this tool all the time. It's one of my secret weapons for making DJ edits. And I have a video on how to make DJ edits. I'll leave you a link up above. The cool thing about this tool is oftentimes you find in Ableton people are working on grid, and this isn't perfectly on grid. If I wanted to find the grid of this song, for example, I could use the Identify Beat feature in Pro Tools, and it gets real finite. But that's not the purpose. I could make my edits without having to even be on the grid. Some of the songs that I was editing weren't even really on a grid sometimes. They were humanized and human drummers or people were playing some of them. So it didn't actually fit well perfectly on the grid. Another great thing about this feature is I might want to grab a snare to a snare. You know, if you come in at the beginning of the measure and you slice that moment, you might cut off a cymbal or a crash or an effect or a reverb tail. So I would usually go in and tab into something where that effect or that crash was over, and then find the section that I needed and tab over and slice and create my 8-bar intro or 4-bar intro and create loops this way. I could easily select this, and then if I was in shuffle mode, I could just duplicate, and if that was a perfect loop, boom, I just made a perfect loop. Editing features in Pro Tools are amazing. So, you know, they definitely blow Ableton's out of the water. Can't stress that enough. Another feature that Pro Tools trumps Ableton to me, let's say I'm recording a vocalist or a guitarist or whatever. Vocal comping or just using the takes feature in Pro Tools is awesome. Ableton did not offer this until the recent Ableton 11 update, and I find it a little clunky, and I haven't really used it much because I just record in Pro Tools. But if every time I start with a vocalist or instrumentalist, anytime I need to record something, I make all my tracks. First thing I do is I go to the playlist selector and I hit new. I start my first recording on 0.01. And I'm not going to give you a lesson on vocal comping or comping in general, but this is the point of it is that you record all your takes. Every time I have a new take, you make a new one. Vote to number 2 and 3 and so forth. And you can open these into different lanes, or you can just toggle between them, and then you comp all the best parts and put it on the main track. So you can copy and paste them all up to the main one, which is very handy because it allows for you to get the best of each take. Maybe you got a really good word in this take, but you messed it up on the previous take, so you can comp that right in and just get the best of everything. If you're interested on a video on comping, shoot me a comment down below and I can make you one. So then what you can do, if you wanted to view your playlists, you can just open them up in here, and as you can see, then I'll have them all lined up, and I literally could select the audio and just drag it up to the top, which is the comp, And it's just the best, you know. Pro Tools was the king of this. Another thing, Ableton got real big, obviously, on warping. I remember when I was a kid and I was working at a Home Depot, there was a music store named Professional Sound and Music, which was an amazing store. They actually consulted the build here with RLX Acoustics at my studio years ago. And I knew a guy that worked there named Ray, and he first introduced me to Ableton when it was like one of the first versions of Ableton. And it was interesting. I was still using an MPC. I'm a very big hardware guy. As you can see, my hardware is back here. My original MPC is back there as well. And but it was a unique concept, the whole warping thing. So Pro Tools had to catch up. Pro Tools can do the same thing. You know, I can turn on the it's called Elastic Audio in Pro Tools, a slight different bit, but I could turn it on here. So there you have 4 different modes here. I'm going to go ahead and select polyphonic for this one. And then once you do that, it's going to analyze it, and then I can go into the warp mode. And basically, now you have the same type of ability to click and just change things and drag them and warp them, just like Ableton. So I use this exclusively after recording, say, vocals or instrumentalists, to get things a little bit more on time. It's part of how I tune and clean vocals. And I could make a whole video on vocal editing and vocal tuning if you're interested. Like I said, leave me a comment down below. So that's another great feature that Pro Tools, you know, it did copy Ableton in that regard. Ableton was the winner first there, but Pro Tools has it, and, you know, it's great. Can't deny that. Lastly, I want to talk about the mixing architecture in Pro Tools. I personally feel that the mix architecture in Pro Tools just sounds better. Back in the day when I was making beats on an MPC, I would always have to track them into Pro Tools with my 8-out expansion, and I would always find that things just instantly sounded better. I still find that to this day. Sometimes I take things out of Ableton or whatever. Pro Tools just sounds beefier to me. The mix architecture inside, the architecture of the mixer is just better. I also find that the mixer is a little bit more standard to my liking. I mean, before, Ableton would only allow you to group tracks and have one group, where now you can do groups within groups, but before you couldn't do that. With Pro Tools, you could bust things any which way you want because you're manually doing it and you're not just selecting a bunch of tracks and hitting Command G. And I'll kind of get into Ableton next, but yeah, I just think personally, I'm just kind of ranting about the sound quality of Pro Tools. It is the industry standard, and it's probably the industry standard for a reason. Okay, jumping into Ableton. Ableton has more of a production suite feel. It's not that tape recorder I was talking about. You've got all your plugins and your sounds easily accessible in the browser section. You've got a groove menu, which is easily accessible with this little button right here. You've got, you know, the ability to do working in the arrangement view, or you can work in the clip view. And I have a whole series on a quick Ableton overview. I'll leave you a link up above to that if you're curious about these different modes. Not going to get into that in this video since I've already made those videos, but, you know, differences between Ableton and Pro Tools. Ableton works more in a global fashion. Everything's on the grid. You can turn the grid off and, you know, get it out of the snapping to the grid function, but it's still trying to get everything into a global BPM. You can still change the BPM down here at the master if you'd like, if you want to automate that, but at the end of the day, you just got to turn your automation on, and then there you have your song tempo. At the end of the day, one of the things that is very clutch to Ableton is just the being able to produce fast and get ideas out fast. I mean, it's amazing for that. The possibilities with Ableton are also endless with the automation and the effects. There's things in Ableton that you can do that you just can't do in Pro Tools. They operate in 2 completely different ways. And I love how you can quickly automate something just by clicking on it. So for example, I've got a Pro Q3 here. If I just create that node and hit this frequency, and I have the automation enabled, now I am, as you can see, on that band, that frequency. And if I was to automate that, you can see that it's moving just like that. Look how fast I was able to just automate that. With Pro Tools, you literally have to go into the plugin and click the little automation enable button, enable the parameters you want to automate, go back to the arrangement timeline view and then select that and do your automation. It's a little bit clunkier in that regard. So Ableton wins on speed for sure. Ableton's great for getting ideas out with the clip view, and then you can switch over to the arrangement view. Pro Tools doesn't offer that type of production capability. Another great feature that I love about Ableton that Pro Tools does not have is this track delay feature. I use this a lot, and this allows me to nudge things in milliseconds or hundredths of a millisecond, and allows me to get things into my own pockets and my own grooves. I mean, I still have my grooves here, my groove pool, but this is just manual control. I'd have to literally use the nudge feature in Pro Tools, which if you have the expanded keyboard is just the plus and minus. And at the top, you can pick how much you want to nudge, but you're actually nudging your audio on the timeline. Whereas in this situation, you can leave your audio in place and just nudge it. So I wish Pro Tools would adopt that feature, because that's amazing. Hands down, that is one of the best features of Ableton in my opinion. So in Ableton 11, they do offer the ability to do the same thing as take, so you could do your comping. It's called Take Lanes. I don't find it as easy to use. I'm not going to show you how to use it. If you're curious, you could look that up in the manual, or if you want me to make a video on it, shoot me a comment down below. Maybe I'll do that. I've tried it. It's not as user-friendly to me, but that's just me. But there's another unique thing about recording with Ableton where you have a little bit of latency, and I was watching a YouTube video. I can't find it anymore. I'd love to reference the original creator. But if you're using something like a UAD, you might want to record with everything turned off. You see when you hit record enable that it's going to automatically be on auto usually, but that is my vocal. And then you can go in, so you're monitoring the input, and I have the track muted so you can't hear it, but that's something that you should pay attention to as well. There's a unique thing about recording with Ableton. It does have a little latency, and Pro Tools is a little better about that. That's why I think it's better for recording personally. Lastly, let's talk about support. Ableton does have good support, and Pro Tools Avid has support as well. I've read online that Ableton support is better than Avid. However, I've hit both of them up and gotten responses. So depending on what type of musician or artist you are and what you're doing is going to dictate what DAW you might find yourself in or liking better. Like I said, I personally use both of these programs. I'm not knocking either one. They both have their pros, they both have their cons, but they're both great, and I'm an Avid fan. So if you have any questions, let me know. And that's an overview on Pro Tools versus Ableton. Pros, cons, differences, and what I like about each one and why I use them. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment down below. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and the bell notification will keep you up to date. Once again, my name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering, and have a great day.